you start off every single interview, whether it's, okay, walk me through your resume, okay, how'd you get to this point? They word it many different ways, but it's all the same thing. And this is honestly a big part of how you sell yourself right off the bat. And I mean, mine's super rough now. I haven't done this in months, but it'll kind of give you a background about how I started and how I got to where I'm at. So anyway, I graduated in 2006 from Century High in Pocatello, Idaho. I chose Westminster over a number of schools because of small class sizes, and I really wanted to play soccer. Obviously, I don't need to tell you guys on Westminster, you're all here already. The reason why I got into finance, and let me say, kind of the points that I'm hitting are not necessarily the things that you have to hit, but things that could be good, if you have outside experiences or other internships or things to insert earlier on, then by all means do that. But anyway, so I picked finance as a major after my first major trip with Rob Patterson, who I'm sure many of you have had. We went to the New York Stock Exchange, the New York Mercantile Exchange, and a number of large Wall Street firms. And at that time, honestly, I didn't know a whole lot about finance, but it was all very intriguing to me. And at that point, I kind of focused my studies on finance. I'd always been a good student, but I always focused more on school and soccer, and kind of that's it. And it was a big detriment to me early on because I didn't have any resume builders other than soccer and a GPA. And so one thing that I kind of was way behind on was an internship. And for those of you, I don't know how old all of you are, but if you're a freshman or sophomore, look now. It's never too early to start an internship. So anyway, I took my first internship at Northwestern Mutual, which they're pretty prevalent on campus now, which I'm sure maybe some of you have interned at or interning at or have heard of. And it was a good experience for me. It was all very client-facing and client-oriented, which was good for me to kind of sit down and talk to people one-on-one and kind of walk through somewhat detailed and somewhat hard to understand financial stuff every once in a while. And let me just kind of say this real quick. I put a note in here. I used to always finish when I would give my story, I would finish with, and Northwestern didn't work out for me because whatever reason, or in the end, I didn't like it because of this reason. And never ever be negative in an interview. You always want to say the positive things, what you did enjoy. I liked Northwestern because, they taught me the insurance industry in only a few months, and I was able to grasp a lot more of, the financial industry that I didn't know was possible. But you don't ever want to say, but I left because I didn't really think it was for me, or because, whatever it is. That just kind of puts a negative spin as you move through your resume with the interview, and then they kind of think, okay, well, what is he going to say about our firm when he leaves, or that kind of thing. So that's one main thing that I would add, and just kind of wanted to get in there. So anyway, so I finished at Northwestern and graduated around the same time, December of 2009. And at that point, I thought, the market's kind of not positive, and so I'll just get my MBA. I was lucky to start right off in spring of 2010 at Westminster. And another way that I found my second internship was actually through Rob Patterson, and something that I would recommend to all of you as well. Or, find your favorite teachers or classes that you've enjoyed, and, go to lunch or just schedule a meeting with a teacher and just kind of pick their brain. And I was able to do that with Rob, and he lined up an internship with me, an internship for me with Summit Financial, which is an accounts receivable lending, or a factoring company, if any of you know what that is. And it's just a local company here in town, but it was another good experience, and I was there from February of 2010 to September. And, again, not like I'm talking to you as an interviewee to an interviewer. It wasn't for me, but it was good to just add more things, more kind of building blocks onto my resume, so it didn't look like, I didn't really do anything in college and in my MBA. And so at that point, I applied for and got into the University Venture Fund, which I'll also say, I know some of you are in the Venture Fund. It's a really good experience, and for those of you who are focused on entrepreneurship or kind of the investing side of finance, it's a really good opportunity to get in and you invest real money and make real decisions on real investments. And so that was another really, really good experience for me. So anyway, that's that was super choppy, and I kind of wanted to insert a few things. But that's kind of how I would walk through a resume and take, half as much time that I did or even less. And just kind of hit the high points, and you want to make sure that you're always, keeping things positive, definitely. But it's just kind of the quick way to give everyone a quick overview, because, odds are, now that I'm sitting on the other side and we're getting resumes for another analyst position actually up here, and just seeing the amount of time that goes into the interviewer preparation, it's very limited. And so a lot of times that first glance at their resume is the first time they've ever looked at it, or the second time they've ever looked at it. They haven't intently studied, each bullet point and know exactly what you're doing. And so it's a quick way, and you want to, really, really polish it. It's the thing that that's going to be coming in every single interview, and it's very, very important. And so anyway, I guess I'll talk now kind of at the end of my MBA until how I got into Davidson and kind of what I did. So I don't know how many of you know what investment banking is. It's a very large industry. It's concentrated more on the West Coast than the East Coast. It's very, very rare to have any sort of investment banking presence in Montana. So what I did, I focused my search, not like I'm saying I focused my search in Montana. I focused my search mostly on the West Coast. I didn't want to go to the East Coast. I guess I would say the first things that I did to kind of get an overview of the industry, learn what you're going into. But I'm just trying to put some sort of a positive spin on just interviewing kind of online and through websites. But, candidly, and I don't know how many of you have done this, it's really, really difficult to just insert a resume into a database and hope that, you're one of 500 resumes and yours just, for whatever reason, gets flagged positively. So what I had to do was, and coming from Westminster, as some of you might know, it's tough to reach out just to alumni and that kind of thing, because we just don't have as many alumni as bigger state schools. So what I would say is utilize LinkedIn, which I did a lot, and I wouldn't find necessarily people from Westminster, but it was just people from Utah schools or people with some sort of connection to Utah, whether it was going to school or they used to have a job here. I played soccer here, so it was if I saw someone had soccer on their background or as an interest, I would reach out and I would try and kind of manufacture a relationship with someone, just finding email online. And honestly, I had a lot more success than just submitting resumes online. I would hear back every once in a while. I never got an interview just from submitting online, but when you kind of put your name out there in front of another human being instead of just a computer database, I think it's a lot. It's just a better first step. And so that would be one main thing that I did, and I really focused on. Unfortunately, saying, "Oh, I played soccer," do you want to give me an interview, doesn't always work out as well as, this professor from this school recommended me that was also, the alma mater or whatever. And so they were all very loose. But I would say focus more. I don't know how many of your seniors either are really trying to do this, but focus more on the personal aspect than just on kind of the corporate databases. And find whatever reason, whether it's a religion or some sort of other background trait. Try and really use those. So anyway, I guess for me and how I found Davidson, there were a number of companies that I was kind of targeting, and they were, and I would just kind of go through and look at job postings online and that type of thing, and make sure you follow Vault, and I followed eFinancial Careers, OneWire, LinkedIn again. There's a number of things that you can just kind of keep yourself appraised of. But anyway, there's a managing director here in Salt Lake. Oh, I guess they're in Salt Lake City. And I saw the job posting online, and I kind of reached out to him, and this was my real kind of chance where, okay, I'm in Salt Lake and he's in Salt Lake, and so it was much easier to form a connection with him than just saying, oh, I saw that you played soccer 8-10 years ago, whatever. And so once you kind of have that inside connection, whether it's, Salt Lake City oriented or Westminster oriented or religion oriented, something that's really firm, really try and put together a good email to that person and just kind of outline again your story in one paragraph or less, 3 or 4 sentences. Mine would always say, hi, I'm Skylar. I'm an MBA student at Westminster, and I'm graduating in May of 2011, and I'm very interested in breaking into investment banking. If you have 15 or 20 minutes, I'd love to sit down and talk to you on the phone about what you've liked and didn't like about getting in, or any number of things but what you want to get out of that meeting with that person. And ultimately, it's probably going to be, I want you to hire me, but you don't want to say that right off the bat. You kind of want to ease into it. And they know what you're kind of interviewing or what you're emailing for, but you want to, I don't know, I guess the unprofessional word would be tacky, which you don't want to come across as that, or over abrasive and abrupt at just saying, I want a job. So, they kind of want to feel you out first of all, and make sure that you're someone that they wouldn't mind recommending. And so anyway, so I would send that email, and I would always attach my resume and say, for your convenience, here's my resume. And luckily he got back to me, and they had an opening up here. And so kind of the rest is history. I accepted in March and started at the end of May, and I've been here for 5 months or so. Sorry, I'm just kind of flipping through my notes. Does anyone have any questions just real quick at this point before I get into a few other things? Was that all? Was any of that?
How can we pick kind of a smaller boutique investment bank instead of, or did you specifically choose a smaller one, or?
Yeah, so I guess for those of you who aren't as familiar with investment banking, so they have kind of 3 tiers: a bulge bracket, which would be like Goldman Sachs, which has a big presence, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, a number of middle market firms, and then a boutique, which is much smaller. I think there's 35 total investment bankers at D.A. Davidson. And so, kind of back to your question, it's not that I specifically targeted, but I didn't honestly start doing this until December or January, and by that time, a lot of the people already had offers from the bigger banks. And so, because Davidson doesn't have a normal recruiting cycle, it's just kind of whenever an opening comes is when they post the job. I kind of got lucky that way. So, I would say if you're thinking about it, though, the pluses and minuses of a smaller firm compared to a bigger firm, and I think this could be translated to many job functions other than just investment banking. I came in the first 2 days, and I was working on actual assignments that were going out to clients. And that was pretty cool to see, like, okay, so we have an active engagement with this company and this company, and, I need you to put together this slideshow and send it to me and PDF it, and then, by the way, don't mess it up because it's going to their CEO in, 8 hours or whatever. On the other hand, at a big bank, at Goldman Sachs or something like that, and some of you may have friends who work at Goldman Sachs here, they get shipped off to New York City for a week or 2 weeks or months at a time and get all of that kind of back-end training, where on my end it was kind of you're thrown in and you don't get the training. And so it's a lot more of a closer atmosphere kind of right off the bat, because they need you to produce solid work right off the bat. And so think about it. It's a plus and a minus at the same time. It's, okay, I'm doing relevant work right off the bat, but I don't know what I'm doing. Or it's, I'm not going to do anything for 3 months, but sit in a classroom and get this stuff pounded into my head along with, 100 other kids or whatever. So Mike, Mike gave me kind of an outline of what to talk about, and I hope that kind of answered some of the questions. What I did also do was speak with one of the more senior bankers, I guess, at Davidson, and he gave me some resume and interview and networking tips. And I have this all in a Word document if it's easier for you to take notes and or if it's easier for me to just send it to you later, Mike can give you my email, or I can send it to him and he can send it out. But I'll just kind of quickly read through this, and let me give you a quick background on who he is. So his name's Tom Hayes. He's a principal with D.A. Davidson, and kind of in the hierarchy, it's managing director and then principal. So he's top 8 or top 10 guy at our firm, very, very senior. He's been with Davidson for, I think, 13 years. And so these are things, these are the people that you guys are going to be interviewing with, and these are the people that are going to be looking at your resumes. And so I thought, this would be much more valuable than me telling you necessarily what I would put on a resume, because frankly, I have no say and won't have any say for a number of years. But this is a guy that has seen, hundreds or thousands of resumes and knows what he likes and what doesn't like, and what gets people jobs and what gets people crossed off. So I'll just quickly read through this. The number one bullet point is always include your GPA. If you don't, I assume the worst. He also likes to see an overall GPA as well as major GPA. And the last, kind of finishing this bullet point, we want well-rounded students that can read, write, and work with numbers. And he will even exclude candidates that have great experience and good attributes if they have lower than a sub-5 GPA. And I know there are students don't have a 3.5 GPA. And what I would say is it's kind of a case-by-case basis to whether you want to leave it in or leave it out. If for example, I was looking at a few resumes the other day, and some of them were 3.2, 3.3, 3.4, but I worked 40 hours and paid for all of my schooling. And if there are things like that you're doing, I would definitely add it. And if you have a 3.7 or a 3.8 and are still working 40 hours or playing soccer or lacrosse or basketball or volleyball or something, put that on there, because the more things that are pulling away from you, and you can still keep up a solid or a good GPA, I think it just makes you look better in their eyes. And one other thing that just kind of came to me, he said, so we want well-rounded students, and that's something that when I started at Westminster, I played soccer and went to class and then went home and played video games, and that was it. And wasn't in finance club. I wasn't, sitting in a meeting like you guys are. I wasn't in student government, and that's something I don't know how many of you are younger and still have some time to join some of these, other things other than finance club. But it's very, very helpful to say the least. This is at the very minimum. It's another thing to put on your resume as a small bullet point. It just shows that like what Tom said, you're more well-rounded than just playing soccer and going to school. And so kind of following with that next bullet point, he says leadership roles in school groups are a plus, and being active in these types of groups shows initiative. So it's one thing to, come in and sit down and be like Nick and not even look at the screen, and it's another thing and it's another thing, to be like Mike and take time to set this type of thing up. And that, honestly, for Mike, it gives him another solid thing to talk about in his interviewing process. And so kind of working down the list, talking about jobs and internships, and this is kind of something a little bit of what I echoed, that it's just a huge plus to have experience in the business or the career field that you want while you're still in school. And whether that's, a full-time job and you have to do it to pay for school, or whether it's a summer internship, I would say anything is better than nothing. And if you can get relevant experience while you're still in school, it's even better. And so definitely keep your eye out for that. And even if it is a little more of a challenging internship, or, you're not going to be able to, have as much free time, it may be worth it in the longer run if you're able to line up a job right out of school. These next things are just kind of formatting, but I think also very important. And in investment banking, and as I'm sure in every other field, the format, the presentation, and that type of thing are very, very critical. And so these are just kind of that type of kind of that show that you care and put effort into what you're doing. Because I mean, if you don't produce good work on your resume, something that you should have spent hours, studying and reading and rereading and editing, what are you going to do when they give you an assignment and you have an hour timeline? And so he said always to have a one-page resume and always send it out in PDF, which I don't know if all of you do that or not, but I would say I would recommend that as well. Just formatting and that type of thing can get messed up, through the email, and somebody could press enter or backspace on accident, and the whole thing can get thrown off. And so it's just an easy way to kind of safeguard and make sure and always kind of scan through the PDF right before you send it, just to make sure that everything transferred properly. The second thing is a cover letter, and this is something honestly that I hated doing, because it was something that would take time, and it wasn't just, okay, I'm going to shoot my resume out to 50 different people, and I applied at 50 different places. But a cover letter shows that you kind of care about what you're applying for, and you care about the job and care about getting an interview. And I would say really, you kind of have a template, but tailor it for each resume or for each job. And I don't know, yeah. Just tailor it for each job, and you want a template, but you don't want it to be too general, and you want to make sure to highlight certain things. If you say you're interviewing for a job in one industry, you want to highlight why you have certain skills that really will benefit you going into that industry, and then tomorrow you're interviewing for a completely different industry. You're not going to say, well, I'm good at this, this, and this, when none of those three things are relevant or applicable to the other industry. This is something that I don't do, and I was actually surprised to see. I would send an email thank you note that night to the interviewers, but he said to do a handwritten thank you note after an in-person interview, which is I would say a little old-fashioned. I can barely mail my rent check in every month, but that's something that, again, I would just think that shows initiative and shows that you care about the job. But I would say always make sure and ask just for a business card. They're always going to have some in their pocket. They're very prepared. But a lot of times, if you don't ask for a business card, they're not going to give you one, and then you're not going to know, okay, is it first letter, last name, or is it full name dot whatever at Davidson, or how do you spell their last name? Just always ask for a business card, and if not, just say, oh, do you mind, if they don't have any or misplaced them or whatever, just say, hey, can I just take your email down at the very minimum? Within the interview, he said eye contact is always a big thing for him, and to always bring extra copies of your resume. I think I've gone to, almost every one of my interviews, there's been, 3 people or 4 people, and you say, okay, well, I have a resume for you, and then this one's mine that I've been marking up on for 4 years. That's just, again, kind of the professional thing and kind of planning ahead. Make sure, just print out a bunch, just run down the CFA and print out 5 or 10 copies, and just make sure you have it with you. And then the final thing, kind of in the interview process, he said, answer honestly. It's okay to say if you don't know a question, but just try and minimize the BS if you don't know it. And then he just kind of made a couple bullet points for networking. I talked a little bit about networking, and these are, I guess mine were kind of from my end, and you want to put yourself out there and send resumes and send emails. But on his end, he's saying there's a fine line between being assertive and being annoying. And so if someone is replying to you, you don't want to press them too much, especially if, they're a busy person and they work a lot, or they're in meetings a lot, that kind of thing. You want to really, really respect their time and always thank them for, taking time to email you back or call you back. And so just try and monitor that. That's definitely a case-by-case thing, and you're going to be able to tell how, kind of how the relationship is going and whether it's kind of growing and just kind of play it by ear, but be very cognizant that these people, have, a lot of other things going on, and then on top of that, they're trying to help you out or answer your questions and that kind of thing. And the last thing is, once you do kind of, set up an interview or set up an informative interview or get a meeting or a phone call, really, really pick that person's brain. Like I said, it's very valuable that they're giving you, 15 minutes or 20 minutes or a half hour and really get the most out of it and come very, very prepared and know, what they like about the industry, what they don't like about the industry. How did they, when, they were in your position, what did they do to better prepare themselves? Kind of like what I've been, trying to tell you. Talk to those people because they're going to have, well, I did this, I didn't do this, make sure you do this, that kind of thing. Things to look out for specifically or things to stay away from. So anyway, that's kind of his list, and that's about it on mine. I kind of jumped all over the place, I apologize, but if anyone else has any more questions, I'd be happy to answer.